Good evening everybody, welcome back to the channel, and tonight we have a paid request from Kian. He has sent me a paid request on Buy Me a Coffee and asked me to check this video out. It's Napoleon's first victory, the Siege of Toulon, 1793. So I'm just going to get into this, but I suppose before we do, I suppose I should, what do I know about this sort of history? Not much. No, never really got into it. Never my thing. World War II and things like that, yes. Napoleonic wars and Napoleon, Lord Nelson, all that kind of thing, no. But I definitely would be open to like learning about it, because it's just as interesting as any other time period or war or that kind of thing. So I guess it's a good place to start. So yeah, as I mentioned, this is a paid request from Kian, and if you'd like to make a request for a specific video like this to be featured on the channel, then just send a donation to the Buy Me a Coffee page, or via any means necessary, or just join the Patreon and then make a request, and that's it, away you go, you'll get your video done. So let's get into this.
An Epic History TV History March collaboration, supported by our sponsor, Osprey Publishing. In the summer of 1793, the French Revolution was entering its fourth year, and France was on the verge of anarchy. In Paris, political extremists had seized control of the revolution. They guillotined the king and imposed a reign of terror that dealt summary justice to all suspected enemies of the revolution. Hoping to unify the new republic, France's leaders had declared war on the Habsburg Empire.
Wow, look at the size of the empire that Hungary had. That's like most of Eastern Europe. Jesus, I didn't know that. I didn't know Hungary had a huge empire like that. I've heard of Bohemia.
But the conflict quickly widened, and soon France was facing the combined might of Europe's leading powers, determined to stamp out her dangerous political experiment. Meanwhile, whole regions of France had come out in open revolt, horrified by the new extremism of the revolution. In August, the Republic suffered a further, potentially fatal blow, when the city of Toulon joined the revolt. Toulon was France's largest and most important naval base in the south, home to a third of the entire French Navy.
Wow.
But now, rebels welcomed their old enemy, the British Royal Navy, into the port, led by Admiral Lord Hood, aboard HMS Victory.
HMS Victory?
It was an extraordinary coup. Without a shot being fired, the Allies had crippled French naval power in the Mediterranean, and gained a vital toehold on the French coast. All French forces in the area were immediately diverted to face this new threat and lay siege to the rebel port. 19,000 troops in all, but since most French officers had been aristocrats who were now fleeing the revolution in large numbers, they were seriously short of professional leadership. Their commander, General Jean-François Carteau, was a loyal Republican, but a court painter by trade, with no military training. To make matters worse, one of his few professional officers, his artillery commander, Colonel Martin, had been badly wounded on the approach to Toulon. Antoine Salicetti, a Corsican deputy of the National Convention in Paris, recommended as his replacement a fellow countryman, a 24-year-old artillery officer who was passing Toulon en route to the front, named Napoleone Bonaparte, or Bonaparte. Bonaparte was a professional soldier, but he'd seen almost no active service. Nevertheless, Salicetti was impressed by his manner, and most of all, his politics. Bonaparte had just written a political pamphlet, a short story about a young artillery officer who berates his fellow diners for their disloyalty to the Republic. General Carteau thought it wise to accept Deputy Salicetti's recommendation.
Well, that's quite powerful.
The great port of Toulon was well defended by city walls, and a dozen outlying forts and redoubts. They were held by 2,000 British soldiers and sailors, 6,000 Spanish troops, 6,000 Neapolitans, and 800 Sardinians. Artillery would be the key to overcoming these formidable defences. But when Bonaparte was put in command of the artillery on the 16th of September, he found himself with few cannon, not enough trained gun crews, and a shortage of gunpowder and shot. With relentless energy and determination, Bonaparte transformed the situation, requisitioning unused guns, training infantrymen to work them, setting up a new forge and workshop, and arranging transport from Marseille of 100,000 sandbags for constructing new batteries.
100,000! You know, one of the things that impresses me about stories like this from the past, when they talk about just how much equipment they ordered for things like this, and you just think about how they transported all of that, because in these days it was all horse and cart. How long would that have taken? You know? All those sandbags, 100,000 sandbags, you know, a couple of hundred at a time on a cart, being pulled by a horse for miles. It's just a massive undertaking, isn't it? There's so much work, so much labour that goes into this.
Through hard work, he was ultimately able to build his force up to 64 officers and 1,500 men, manning 100 cannon, howitzers and mortars. Within days, Bonaparte had established 2 new forward batteries with good revolutionary names, La Montagne and Sans Culottes, which brought Toulon's inner harbour within range, and forced Admiral Hood to move all his ships closer to the port. Bonaparte also came up with a plan, one that would allow the French to bypass most of Toulon's defences and secure the rapid victory the Republic so desperately needed. Bonaparte argued that if Fort L'Aiguillette could be captured, which looked out across the harbour, he could fill it with heavy guns and shell the British and Spanish fleet at anchor. Admiral Hood would be forced to abandon the port and take with him the Allied soldiers that Toulon relied on for its defence.
Okay.
General Carteau saw the merit.
So, the side that Napoleon was on are the anti-royalist Republicans, and the side that we fought with are the royalists. So it's a bit like with the Russian Revolution and the last Tsars, you know, they went into the palace and murdered the family. So we were on the side of, if anybody had tried to protect the family, that's the side that we're on here. Okay. Because the royal families, and they're all like kind of related, aren't they? So it makes sense why we'd be on their side.
Merits of Bonaparte's plan, and on the 22nd of September, French forces attacked Montcaire. But to Bonaparte's exasperation, while he'd argued for an attack by 3,000 men, the indecisive Carteau committed only 400. Not only was the attack easily repulsed, but it alerted the Allies to the danger. Within 48 hours they'd reinforced Montcaire with thousands more troops and built a new fort named Fort Mulgrave, bristling with 20 cannon.
Not messing around.
The position was now so strong, the French nicknamed it Little Gibraltar.
Little Gibraltar. There is only one possible plan, Bonaparte's.
Finally, in mid-November, an experienced professional soldier arrived to take command of French forces, General Dugommier. He saw at once that Bonaparte's plan was the only way to take Toulon, and gave it his full backing. Bonaparte, promoted to major, got to work, overseeing construction of several more batteries in preparation for the decisive assault. One forward battery was so exposed to enemy fire that men refused to be sent there. So Bonaparte renamed it La Batterie des Hommes Sans Peur, the battery of men without fear. And suddenly, there was no
Just imagine being a part of this battle and this war, and one of the batteries of the forces that you're fighting is called the Battery of Men Without Fear. That alone would be enough to make me surrender.
shortage of volunteers. It was an early display.
That's another thing about, war in this period. This was a different type of war to World War II and modern warfare. In World War II onwards, a casualty in that war, it's highly likely to be instant death, or something that you're going to get shot, or something's going to explode and hit you. In this war, it was big knives and cannons. It was, if you got injured in a war in this period, you were going to know about it, and you were going to be suffering for a long time. So that's why, for me, the soldiers in these wars, they were just a different breed of brave, and because it was just completely I mean, look at that, on horseback with your sword, just running at the enemy with your, what was the thing called, the long, not the sword, they had another thing, it was a big long pole. Joust, was it called a joust? I think it was. And they just charge at the enemy with that, holding that in front of them, and if they did it right, it'd knock them off their horse. It's just, oh god. Oof. It's just bravery on another level. But yeah, this is a different type of war, fighting with swords. If I had to choose a war to fight in, I would choose a war with guns rather than swords. I'd rather be shot than stabbed, because at least if you get shot, you're likely to be knocked out by it. And if it is a fatal shot, you'll die quicker, maybe. But, oh, no. A war with swords? No, thank you.
Display of Napoleon's genius for inspiring his soldiers. One that would serve him well in the years ahead. On the 30th of November, the Allied Land Forces commander, British General Charles O'Hara, tried to seize back the initiative, leading an assault on the new French batteries facing Fort Malbousquet. At first the attack was successful. The batteries were overrun, the French guns spiked. But a counterattack with much greater numbers, and led in person by General Dugommier and Major Bonaparte, drove back the Allies. General O'Hara himself was shot through the hand and captured. 12 years before, He'd surrendered to George Washington at Yorktown during the American War of Independence.
Really?
Now he got to surrender to Napoleon Bonaparte.
God, that's quite a historical achievement. I mean, I'm not surrendering, yeah, but this guy surrendered to George Washington and Napoleon. That's quite impressive. I mean, the fact that he was involved in 2 conflicts where he had the opportunity to do that. I mean, in that sense. Getting his praise from Bonaparte.
In the early hours of the 18th of December, in howling wind and driving rain, the French launched a major assault on Fort Mulgrave. The wet conditions made muskets useless, except as clubs,
Really?
or with bayonets.
What, so in these heavy rain and your gun was useless?
Bonaparte led the second wave in person. Amid fierce hand-to-hand fighting, his horse was killed under him, and he was...
Mind you, with the old muskets, you had to put a shot of powder in, gunpowder, and if that got damp, I suppose it wouldn't work. Because the guns in those days, it was the ones where you'd put the gunpowder in, and then you know, with a stick, and then you put the little round ball bearing in, that was the bullet, and then you put that in and fire.
Bayoneted in the thigh by a British sergeant, led the second wave in person. Amid fierce hand-to-hand fighting, his horse was killed under him, and he was bayoneted in the thigh by a British sergeant, a wound that came within inches of ending his life and radically changing the course of history. Finally, the Allied garrison was overwhelmed, and Mulgrave fell to the French. Fort L'Aiguillette and Tour de la Balaquière were soon also in French hands. By the following afternoon, the French had 10 heavy guns in L'Aiguillette, placing the Allied ships within range. Admiral Hood could not expose his valuable ships of the line to such a threat. He had no option but to order an immediate evacuation of the fleet and garrison from Toulon.
Wow. Look, they're all coming in from all
Small
sides
Spanish
now.
and British teams raced to destroy all the French ships and naval stores that they couldn't take with them. But amid the chaos of their departure, 18 ships of the line were allowed to fall back into French hands.
Wow, that just puts it into perspective how, you know, how much of an effect this tactic, this attack was having. They realised that the situation was so dire that they chose to destroy all their equipment and all their arsenal, essentially, before they left. That's how you know that you've got the enemy on the back foot, when they decide, well, we need to destroy what we've got before we leave. But yeah, just, you know, when you look at it like this, you know, they're coming from here, here, here. Like, the only side that they're not coming from is here, because that's the sea. They are surrounded. Like, they've got them, well, they've got us, essentially, into a corner. That is some serious tactic, war, what's the word? Some great war tactic, isn't it? If they meant it to be that way, which I'm sure they did. You know, just, wow. They really did put them in a corner. That's another thing about war, that, you know, the ideas that they come up with and the strategies. And at the end of the day, essentially, it's finding the most efficient, quickest, effective way of killing people. But it is interesting the things that they come up with to make this little charge more effective, this little push into this bit of territory more efficient or a few minutes quicker.
And garrison from Toulon.
Learning about all that.
Small Spanish and British teams raced to destroy all the French ships and naval stores that they couldn't take with them.
Wow.
But amid the chaos of their departure, 18 ships of the line were allowed to fall back into French hands. A badly missed opportunity. Many French citizens of Toulon...
It's like a double loss. You know, not only are they driving you out of the territory that you've held, but whatever you don't destroy falls into the French forces' hands. So you're losing your territory that you've held, and you're strengthening your enemy. So it's like a double blow.
Were desperate to escape aboard the Allied ships, knowing that the Republicans would inflict terrible reprisals on the city. British and Spanish ships took as many as they could, about 14,000 in all, but scores were drowned amid chaotic and desperate scenes. Others were left to face the wrath of the revolution.
Oh, God.
Republican troops entered the city the next morning, and executions and firing squads began almost immediately. For the next 2 weeks, about 200 were executed every day.
200?
Allied propaganda.
200 people were executed every day, and that won't be just soldiers that were left behind, because most of them fled. And you see, that's when these wars in these days, that's also another way that they were different. I mean, well, I mean, even today, you know, modern wars recently, it's not really different. I mean, the war that's going on right now in Israel, the majority of the casualties of this war are children. So I suppose it hasn't really changed. But yeah, it's just, it's like it's almost unavoidable. But at least in Israel and Palestine, right, the children that are dying, it's not really intentional. This, you know, once Napoleon had taken Toulon, he ordered the executions of 200 men, women and children a day. He ordered that. He meant to do that. That wasn't an accident. At least the civilian casualties going on right now, most of it's accidental. I mean, there is the odd sicko picking up a child and using it as a shield, or, you know, killing a civilian when they see them, but it's mostly accidental. You know, like the bombing raids that they're doing. Sometimes they hit a block of flats that haven't been totally evacuated, or a hospital might get hit by a shell, or the shockwave of a bomb that's landed nearby might hit a building that a few people are still in. But with this, he meant to do this. 200 people a day, kill them. So, yeah, I don't know, how do you decide which is worse? If you go by numbers, I think it's up to 14,000 children that have died now in this war in Israel. You're saying 200 a day with this, but how long did it go on for? But you shouldn't really, you know, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't decide which is worse. They're all the worst. Any war where there's even one civilian casualty is a war that's gone wrong, basically, for me. In an ideal world, in wars, the only deaths would be soldiers, for me. They should be the only people allowed to die in a war, because they're the ones that have signed up for it, trained for it, been paid for it. Everybody else, they should, you know, they're nothing to do with it. but it's not a perfect world, so you can't have that. But yeah, it's just even back then it was just the same.
Later blamed Bonaparte for the atrocities, but there's no evidence he was directly involved.
So who ordered it then?
France's young republic was now fighting back on all fronts. And with the fall of Toulon, the Allies had lost a golden opportunity, a chance to stir up further revolt, deal a lasting blow to French naval power, perhaps even overturn the revolution.
You know what I'd like, if there is a, please do let me know if there is a video on it about wars over the last 1,000 years in Europe. If this, how much of a problem this was, where the south of France and the north of Spain meet. Because any wars where the forces had to get around here, because of this, they couldn't just go straight through here. They had to go all the way around Spain. So I would like to, you know, if there's a video that exists that details how much of a impact there being no clear way through here, just to get to this location quicker, had on any past conflicts. I'd love to see that. You know, those little details like that I love as well. So if there is, let me know.
But instead, the French Republic had weathered one of its greatest storms. In no small part, thanks to the remarkable judgment, energy and courage of one 24-year-old artillery officer, now promoted Brigadier General in recognition of his extraordinary service at Toulon.
Brigadier General.
Napoleon Bonaparte had taken his first step on the path to greatness. And for Europe, 21 years of almost constant war awaited.
21 years of war awaited.
Our sponsor, Osprey Publishing, has nearly 200 titles on the Napoleonic Wars alone, written by specialist historians and covering everything from the history of elite units to tactics, weapons and uniforms. Visit their website to find out more.
Right, I'm guessing that's the end.
An epic history TV and cover. Check out.
Yeah, it's just credits and stuff. Right, well, that was very interesting, and I appreciate the suggestion, the request. Yeah, it was fun to learn about certain things that went on. Just, you know, again, I can't stop thinking about where when the forces we were aligned with retreated into the port, and then it got to the point where the forces here, and down here were just moving in. It couldn't have worked out better for the Republican forces, could it, in that sense? It was just perfect for them. But yeah, if I had a complaint, I would have liked more, like, little you know, like, so with the sandbags, how he said he ordered 100,000 sandbags to set up reinforcements, or whatever he said. More stuff like that. You know, he said how many guns were brought in and things like that. I love the little details about conflicts way back in these times, because it just makes it all the more impressive for me, because in these days it was difficult to transport anything anywhere. You know, you didn't have massive cargo ships and huge lorries and cargo planes to move stuff about. You had nothing. You had a horse and a piece of wood on 2 wheels, if you were lucky. And going even further back, you had men with a rope over their shoulder just dragging it along the ground. That's like way, way back, isn't it? Before the invention of the wheel. But yeah, it's just those little stats and figures make it more impressive for me. But I enjoyed it. Yeah, I definitely want to. I wonder if there's a film on this, because I know there's many pieces of media on Napoleon and everything he did. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix has just played him in a biographical drama film, hasn't he? So might have to take a look at that too. But in particular, this, I would like to see a bit more of it. If there is a film about it, and they showcase how when they pushed back the Allied forces into the port of Toulon, and then they started surrounding them. I'd just love to see how that happened and how that came about, and if it's detailed in the war records when they realised that that was the position that the Republican army were in, and how they reacted to that. They must have been absolutely buzzing when they realised that's what they'd done. Oh, we've got them surrounded on all sides. Yeah, it was really good to learn about that. So, yeah, that was a suggestion from Kian Jarrett, and I'm glad he made that suggestion because it was fun to learn about. And yeah, I wouldn't mind more requests like this. Anything to do with history, I'm up for it. So I guess I'll leave you with that, and yeah, a shout out to Kian for the request. If you want to request something specific, it's pretty simple. You have to do one of two things. You either have to join the Patreon, or send a donation to the Buy Me a Coffee page, and that's it. And then message me on the Facebook page or Patreon if you're already a member. If you're doing the method of being a Patreon and then making a request, just send a message on there with the link of the video that you want me to watch, and I will get it done as soon as I can. He made this request last night, I think, so I'm doing this the day after, so that's kind of pretty much the time frame that you'll get it done. Within a couple of days, within the week latest. It depends how much we've got going on. Right now there's not too many requests. I did a request a couple of days ago. It was the most dangerous swimming pool one. When was that? It was further back than that. 16th of February. So 4 days ago. Yeah, 10 most terrifying swimming pools. That was a paid request as well. So yeah, go ahead, make requests, and I'll get them done. So yeah, shout out to Kian for that request. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Check out the Patreon, follow the Facebook page, and subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.